All right, good afternoon. It's right at noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get things started. I want to welcome everyone to the July 2025 Kansas Soil Health Partnership Forum. My name is Jennifer Simmelink. I'm the Executive Director of the forum's host, the Kansas Soil Health Alliance. Thanks again for joining us today. A recording of today's forum and all previous forums are housed on the Kansas Soil Health Alliance's website and YouTube pages. Links to the recordings will be provided to the Kansas Soil Health Alliance's social media pages and newsletter as well, so you have plenty of opportunities to go back and watch this forum and other ones. To start off today, I'm going to put up a short 2-question survey for everyone to complete. This is going to help us and our speakers get an idea of the composition of today's audience. Let me get that started here. Right. If everyone can take a quick second to fill that out, that would be appreciated. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. Thanks for everyone for completing. So as you can see, today we have about half of our audience are farmers and ranchers. We have some educators on, about a third are some agency employees, and then we have a couple of non-governmental employee representatives and an ag professional. And we are predominantly from Kansas today. 82% from Kansas and 2% representing, or 18% representing another state. As a reminder, during the forum, we will have participants muted. If you have a question throughout, you can go ahead and raise your hand. There's a button at the bottom of your page that can indicate that, and then we can unmute you to allow for that question. You can also insert questions into the Q&A box, and we can help our presenters watch those questions and read them as we go. At the end of the presentation, we'll have open time for question and answer as well. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Joanna Johnson, the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the Kansas Soil Health Alliance, to introduce today's speakers.
Okay. Today we have two speakers who have been working together, Kevin Morrill and Jerry Hatfield. Kevin Morrill retired in 2024 as fleet manager for Northern Pipeline Construction Company. He grew up on the family farm in north central Kansas. When he got married, he moved to eastern Kansas, and in 2020, he and his wife Sally bought her family farm where they currently reside and run 100 head of fall calving cows. 8 years ago, Kevin began regenerative ag practices and changed his cattle operation to improve his soil and the way he feeds cattle. Kevin is also the co-founder of Prairie Soil Pioneers, which is a producer-led group that meets and exchanges ideas for best regenerative farming practices in both grain and grazing systems. Recently, he has become a strong advocate for on-farm or on-ranch evaluation of products that can help his farm increase its soil health and the quality of hay, grass, and animals. Jerry Hatfield is the retired director of the USDA-ARS National Laboratory for Agriculture and the Environment in Ames, Iowa, and is a Kansas native, having grown up on a farm south of Wamego. Since his retirement in 2020, he has been active in helping producers understand the value of soil health to improve crop production in both grain and forage crops. He has been involved in speaking engagements across the United States on soil health and regenerative agriculture to help promote an awareness of the value of soil health. His current activities focus on helping producers understand the role of biological amendments on rangeland systems in the Midwest, as well as the dynamics of soil health and how it impacts production, profit, sustainability, and environmental quality. And with that, we'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Joanna. I'm going to share the screen. All right. Since everybody can see this now, we are going to talk about soil health and forage today, how we increase production quality and soil health simultaneously. And we're going to do this in three parts through this presentation. Joanne has already introduced us and everything. Kevin is a producer out of near Wamego. I'm retired lab director. We are brother-in-laws. I'll put that in full disclosure, everybody. I'm Kevin's unpaid consultant, and he tolerates what I do and how we come up with ideas and all of this. But what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about the motivation. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to do that. I'll talk about some of this on-farm range studies that we've been doing, and then we'll follow up really between the both of us with the impact of what this means and everything. So, Kevin, I have the slides, so you just tell me when you want to advance and everything. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you everyone for being on today, and thank you for having us also as well. So, Jerry, let's go ahead on the motivation part. Go to the next slide. Why I wanted to improve my native grass. As we go through these, I'm gonna read my bullet points a little bit, but if I could get more forage from my pasture without increasing my footprint, what does that mean to my operation? These were questions I started having. I started having these a lot more as I got into regenerative crop grounds, seeing the changes I was making in the quality of my hay that I was raising for my cows. Because of my operation, my ground was and working full-time job, I just concentrated on a cow herd. Because when we started out 20 years ago here with the family farm, which this is the farm that Jerry grew up on as well, I didn't have time or enough land to justify the grain farming equipment, the combine, the trucks, etc. So I took and concentrated on something I really loved and enjoyed, and that was the cows. I've always had cows. Growing up in north central Kansas, always had cows. Dad and I worked together, and even though I wasn't there, I was still part of that operation. And now that my dad has passed away, I have rented the farm ground out there, but I also operate the cows out there. So I bring the cows home every year, and that changed some of my grazing tactics, which also inspired how can I get more out of what I have. When you see the impact of the rotation of what the cover crops can do for the soil. In about 3.5, 4 years, I took my organic matter from a 1.5% to 3.5 to above 4 across my ground. I was running 100 acres of farm ground at that time. And so here locally to raise hay on for the cows. To me, that was a big change. And as we understand organic matter, that changes our nutrient requirements for the plants, which means we can start reducing our inputs. And as we was having a Prairie Soil Pioneers meeting, we had Dave Brandt come back and speak. QLF was there, and we give them some time to visit. And Brian from QLF was talking about the study that they did in southeast Kansas, where they took and put this product they have called Boost on fescue. And on a 2.5, 3 year trial, they were seeing 1,900 pounds of gain of pounds per acre plus the improved quality. What we did know here in the Flint Hills is synthetic fertilizers in native grass just doesn't give you a big impact or a lasting result. So as I kept noodling that over the winter, I wanted to see about running a test. Jerry said, "Yeah, go ahead, let's try that." So the first year I did this, I took my side by side with my 30-foot broad jet sprayer, 60-gallon tank, and I got a hold of QLF, and my neighbor is a member of our Prairie Soil. He had access to sold and has access to Elevate Ag products. So we did 4 or 5 different tests out here on native grass that I put up for hay. We did a 20-foot or 30-foot spray strip, with left 30-foot for checks, and the testing was fairly positive. You want to roll on to the next slide. So with those testings, we're seeing soil biology is critical to the success of a crop. And by increasing the quality of the forage through this testing, really got our curiosity up. And the increased curiosity about the role of biology in native grass and how it can impact my cow-calf system really is all part of this motivation. And so with that, that's why I did the testing. It's why I wanted to do the testing. And the first year, I'm going to tell you, was successful. And with that, I'm just going to hand it off to Jerry to go on into the next phase of this.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, as Kevin said, when we ran the preliminary trials, we got pretty excited about what we were seeing and everything else. And so we launched into a series of range studies, because the real question is how do we apply soil health principles to range and pasture land? We do a lot on cultivated land. We really know what's there. How do we take that and begin to look at it when we've got a permanent species out there, and when we look at it. So I'm just going to go through some different pieces of this puzzle, because it's really about how do we take the carbon energy flow path, how do we take the sun and CO2 and water, and photosynthesis, we make a sugar out of it. We transport that sugar into the plant stem down to the roots. We put it as exudates out to the microbes. We influence both the nutrient as well as the carbon cycling in that, and helps us grow that plant better. So we know this, we've seen this work in different plant species and everything else. It's just a matter of how do we translate that into all of this. The process of change for agricultural crops is, we know when we do all those regenerative principles where we reduce tillage, we add the cover crop, we keep it covered, we do influence the water balance because we change infiltration rates. That occurs within days. Then we see the carbon piece, we see the month piece. But when we start talking about range systems, we're not influenced because we already got a standing crop out there that's intercepting water. And so, that piece becomes a different part of that puzzle and everything. So I want people to realize that it's a different way in which we have to look at the energy part of this system from that perspective. The other piece of this that really got me curious, because in a lot of my career I've spent on climate change, what are the impact of CO2 enrichment and all of this. Some work that was done in eastern Colorado where they did CO2 enrichment, where they took and added CO2 into cages, showed us that if we begin to increase the CO2, we had a decrease in protein content of that forage, because we decoupled carbon and nitrogen. Because we had the CO2, we didn't necessarily have the energy piece of that. And we then did other controlled environment studies where we could look at all these different things. We found out as we increased the energy transfer into the soil, we did increase microbial activity. We had a feedback into the plant. We changed the soil, all those different things. So it got me very curious after we started looking at the success of the experiments in 23 of just really what we could begin to do in terms of a native system. We also have to realize that in the recent analysis of the 2024 pasture conditions, only about 8% of our total pastures are at excellent condition. Most of them are good, fair is 28%, and we've got 25% of our grasslands are in a poor, very poor category. I mean, that's really pretty bad when you begin to think about all of this. So that path towards soil health and range and pasture is really about a focus of how we can enhance the energy input into that soil. And so when we think about this, how do we get that extra energy into that system? And so when Kevin talks about these products, a Boost, that's a molasses-based product. It is a high energy carbon piece of this because carbon is the currency in which we begin to invest into the soil to begin to change all the biological activities and the feedback into the plant itself. So in late May of 23, we added those treatments. We added 2 gallons of Boost. We put 2 gallons of Boost plus 2 gallons of UAN. We added some amino 15 and the 721 MKP, which is part of the Elevate Ag piece, into just a prairie hay field. And all we did was we just harvested the grass by clipping, and we looked at forage quality. We also put a constraint on this. Kevin put this onto the system as saying, we don't want the total cost of this to be more than $20 an acre. We thought we're going to start it really low. We figure we can get a return on that in looking at it. So that was one other constraint that we put into the system, and we still maintain that today. What we found is that we increased forage production anywhere between 400 to 900 pounds an acre, protein by 2 points for a native grass system. And then what we ended up with a little anecdotal observation, because these were in that area in which Kevin actually turns cattle out in the spring, is that they began to graze those forage areas that had the higher quality much faster than anything else in that pasture. And so they automatically went to that part of the field to graze first, which cattle do have an innate sense of where the high quality forage are. You can see that in a lot of different studies. Feed the dog, Kevin. And so you look at all this. So in 24, in a partnership between QLF Agronomy, Elevate Ag, and working with a bunch of different producers, we expanded the trial locations from that one site at Kevin's to 7 different sites in northern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, south central Kansas, northeast Kansas, and western Kansas. We had these treatments. We had both 2 and 4 gallons of Boost per acre, 1.7 gallons of Boost plus the 1.75 gallons of Liquid Life, which is a biological product, 2 gallons of range food plus a fungal, 2 gallons of range food plus a bacteria, and just 2 gallons of range food by itself. And we put those into 20-foot strips, 300 feet long, with a 10-foot buffer between the strips. So we have those 6 treatments scattered throughout there. These are our producers that we owe a lot of things to. Kevin actually has 2 sites, one in eastern Kansas and one in western Kansas at Portis. And see all these different cooperators that have wanted to participate in this, because we got them together and said, we really want to try this. We want to look at it. Are you willing to participate? And every one of them said, we really are interested in what we can do on our native systems to see it work. So here were our 24 partners, QLF Agronomy and Elevate Ag. Range of different soils in all of this, everything from a Pawnee kilt loam to a Dennis silt loam in northern Oklahoma. All of these, and looking at what soils we had. Obviously, there's different climates as we go from north to south and east to west in all of this. So it gives us a pretty good range of all the different things that we're looking at. Here's just an example. The QLF put together a spray boom and a unit that we can put behind a pickup that we could just spray at that 30-foot swath marked it all out so we could apply this. So it's the application system. So everything, in full disclosure, everything in this project right now has been donated time and product and everything. So, we don't have any external support other than what the companies are looking at. And so the 24 measurements, we did grass clipping for weight and quality. We did forage quality on the forage samples through Servitech. So we have a full range of everything that's out there and everything else. We did just some spot samples using the microbiome meter with soils. We didn't do the full soil health analysis, basically because we didn't have the resources to do that. We actually applied for a SARE grant to help support this, but we got turned down for a number of different reasons and all of that. But here's the preliminary results, just to put it into perspective, is that in general, by adding energy into that system, because that's what we're doing with these products, is we increase grass production, we increase crude protein, we change the relative feed value, and we change and increase the total digestible nutrients. But the impacts of those products are not consistent over locations. You can't pick out a winner and say, oh, run out there and put on 2 gallons of Boost because this is what's going to do it. Is that sometimes Boost was good, sometimes Range Food was good, and the consistency, because we have a very interesting interaction going on between the species that are in the native forage, the weather conditions, all these things that happen throughout there. So we're not promoting a product, but really an examination of what we have to do to make a positive change in soil health, as well as what that does to increase the forage quality as well as quantity. And long term, we're looking at the sustainability of the system, not only from the profitability, but the long-term viability, and even the change in species in terms of this that could make that system more resilient to in having any invasives come into it, a number of different things that happen from that perspective. And here's just some visual changes. You can see the green area across that. You look across the other side, you can see parts where we've had a difference in just growth across that and everything else. So just some of the visual changes we see when we do it onto pasture hay. So here's the general observation. So we have this variability among sites, what you'd expect. That's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated with this, because we can begin to look and say, really what are some of the driving factors? Overall, we see this very positive impact. We do see an increase in quality, that crude protein and relative feed value compared to the control. And so we always see that change, but we don't see a consistent change among the products. And the positive enough effort going on that we said, we need to continue into 2025. And so we looked at all the producers. We had a meeting in Kansas last fall where we took all the results and explained them to all the different producers, and then asked them if they wanted to continue. And they all said, we need to continue on because this is of interest to us, and how do we manage our grazing operations, much in that same aspect that Kevin's motivation in saying, can we do things that would help increase our productivity of our forage, and what would it mean for our cow-calf operations in all of this? I'm just going to give you examples from Kevin's farm, and his everything is that in one case, we did see a decrease in crude protein content, but most of the time we've seen that increase of 1.22% points in crude protein. Relative feed value, one of the treatments we did actually decrease it because we changed the production levels. One of the things we've been looking at is, because we do the clipping studies and the crude protein, is what are we changing in terms of pounds of protein per acre out there, as well as the total amount of digestible nutrients. In eastern Kansas, we only increased it about 400 pounds an acre. about almost 500 pounds. In western Kansas, we actually almost a half a ton increase in production as we went along. In terms, or 3/4 of a ton and everything. But in terms of all this changes, it's enough to say, this is something to get excited about. We need to understand what's going on in this process as we've happened now. And so I've looked at, what are we correlated with? Is that change in dry weight overall? Is that the more dry weight we can increase by increasing the energy going into that, we do get a positive increase on crude protein. We do see a positive increase on relative feed value. We see a positive correlation back to total nutrients. So increasing dry weight product has an impact on forage quality. And because we increase the capture of energy by that plant with no dilution effect, because what we'd often expect is we grow a bigger plant by adding these things, that we would end up decreasing the constituents of that plant, either nutrients or protein. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing that piece of the puzzle as well. And we've written papers on just the whole energy flow in biological systems now, in cover crops and cultivated crops. But now when we begin to look at the idea of perennial crops in range and forage, we begin to see this standpoint as well. So in 2025, what we've done is we've added some additional companies. In-soil algae has came along and said, we've been looking at studies where we put the algae systems into there. We haven't combined it with the energy-based products like Boost or Elevate Ag, and we're interested in bringing that. Organisan has a chitosan that they've looked at, and what's interested with the chitosan and everything else, as they've applied that to lawns, golf courses, and everything else, they've seen a reduction in ticks and everything else. So there's some interesting impacts going on in terms of the metabolism within that plant as we begin to look at that. They had not put this in with an energy-based product as well. We've added some additional cooperators, the Downey Ranch at Manhattan. And so now we've got these additional treatments. We've added, we kept all of the 24 treatments, and we've added some additional treatments in 2025. Boost and Gallon, the Hypergrow is a product out of Range Elevate Ag as well. We added that with in-soil. We've got a combination where we've got Boost, Hypergrow, in-soil, and Organisan, all of those things wrapped together and everything else. And so those are additions to what we have, and we've continued the 24 treatments to all these sites as well. We had enough land area in all the different sites to be able to add this. And so what we're doing now, and let's see, Kevin, we sampled last week in Kansas?
Yes, last week we did here, Downey Ranch and my place here, and they were sampling this morning on my farm out west.
Okay, so we did grass weights, and so the standard clipping studies, we take a 2-foot circle, we weigh those, we send those samples to Servitech for all the different analysis. We'll be getting those back early next week. We'll go through and extract all that data out of that. That'll be for the forage quality piece. In all of this, because we've had additional cooperators and the success from the 24 studies, is that we collected soil samples to run the Haney test. We're running PLFA. We've run some infiltrometer, and we've run some penetrometer test. We've also looked at some microbiome meter, and then we've got pictures along with this. So on all of these sites, we have those on the 24 sites as well as the 25 treatments that we have going on. So it's really an interesting study from my standpoint, because typically we don't work in native species. I will interject in this, as we've worked with Kevin's systems and everything else, when he talks about the increase of organic matter and everything else, where we begin to look at this in his sedan systems that are often mixtures and everything else, is that we do see an increase in the forage quality of that, the increased protein content and everything else. So as we begin to change the soil, we're seeing this positive impact back into the whether we're looking at it as a grazing species or whether we're looking at it as a bale species that we feed into those cows, the forage quality becomes an important part of this. So the impact of this, and I'll turn it a little bit back to Kevin to have him talk about why you've seen his motivation. Now you can talk about some of the impact that's on there as well. So Kevin, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Build a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet is we've got that built and we've got it so it's the data is fillable, so you can change the numbers. So the idea of the spreadsheet is my goal was 500 pounds to the acre if we could increase. And at some point, are we going to share that today, Jerry?
I'm gonna stop sharing the slide deck and bring your spreadsheet up.
Okay, let's bring that spreadsheet up. We'll go through that. Because and this can be manipulated to fit individual producers' needs as well when we look at the spreadsheet. So on one end, pasture size, that's what I have a pasture as we go through it. And so then as you go down through there, 140 acres, I can run 20 pairs. That's 7 acres per cow. My average cow weight's 1,300 pounds. Then to figure out number of pounds that I would need, I figured 3% of their body weight. That's 39 pounds. We have 180 days to graze. And so that's 720 pounds. So then total feed required is 140,400 pounds for that time period. If we could increase 500 pounds to the acre and improve the forage quality, we add 70,000 pounds. So then we can increase nine cows. So then I'm having a hard time reading that, Jerry, as we go on down. So I took 9 cows, additional calves at $267 a pound, average of 500-pound calf. That's $1,335. So as we go on through this, the additional revenue is 12,015 pounds. That's on year 2023. So I've went in there, so we also, I figured $850 a year to keep that cow. So you got $7,050, $6 for the additional 9. And then as you get down, your net is $2,800. And then the return on investment return on ROA is 4.29 times. And so as you go through the spreadsheet, we can go through those, you go through each one of those line by line. But the idea here is see what our costs are, what's the bang for a buck, and if we can increase. So I'm running 20 cows currently on 140 acres, 9 additional cows for applying 2 gallon of boost any one of these products, I'm gaining 30%. I can increase my cow herd. If we can prove consistency, we'll be able to increase the number of cows by 30% without increasing my footprint. The only footprint we might have to increase would be you will have to raise more feed for the wintertime. Big deal. We usually can figure out how to do that. And so as we go across this spreadsheet is just the difference in poundage going up from one year to the next, and what we were seeing. So that's kind of the idea of the spreadsheet, so we can see what put our cost to it, and everybody's cost per cow is going to vary. I just came up with some average numbers that's out there, and return on investment. Because it's still impressive, but we have to add what it's going to cost to maintain that cow for a year in here to see what our total bang for our buck is. I hope that's making sense, guys, because this gets me excited. If I can increase, that's just the cows, then we're putting dollars in our pocket. And it doesn't take that much longer to work a few more head of cows, maintain them, and so forth. That's kind of the idea of this spreadsheet. Jerry, you want to add any comments to this part?
No, it's we built this I built this for Kevin so that we could start looking at this. I mean, that third column over there is one of the things, because we don't talk much about what the impact of that additional protein would be, because the additional protein and everything else is that we'd actually have less consumption on that, because the cows would meet all their daily requirements. And we've seen a little bit of that with increased quality in Kevin's sedan mix, is that the cows weren't eating a lot of the supplemental protein out of there because they were already satisfied with what was in the forage. So all this becomes important to look at it. I'm going to stop sharing and go us back to the slide deck now. There we go. Because now we can look and say, can we increase the stocking rate, or, can we increase the quality of this and improve the ability of that range system to compete against the invasives? We've got multiple endpoints that we want to look at from this standpoint as well. And so it's a matter of when we can begin to look at this, analyze this, and really put some metrics around that overall system. Kevin, you want to go to this one because this becomes important?
Yes, it does. So I went back and we were looking at what's the average size of a cow herd in the United States. So in the 2022 census, these are the top 10 states for livestock. And as we look at this, what really jumps out is over on the right is cow herds under 100 are 89% of the total number of cows. And the big one is that bottom average herd size of 21. And since 2022, I just heard we have the lowest numbers almost in history of cows on the farm on a report that came out the other day. I didn't get the numbers, wrote down back to it. But let's just look at this 21 head. If we could get producers to increase their herds by 10% on the same ground, that's huge. And the other reason if what we're doing will pans out, which I'm very excited that it will, we're losing 1,000 acres a day to urban sprawl and land disappearing, whether it's farm ground, pasture ground. And that's going to be becoming as efficient as we can with our livestock operations or our farming operations is going to be, as our expenses go up. Right now, the cow guy is in the driver's seat with cows, calves selling for record profits. But I'm sure that's not going to stay around forever. But we have the ability now to take some of this knowledge that we're learning with regenerative agriculture, start trying to figure it out and how to apply it to the native range and answer those questions, because we can make things better for everybody. And that's what's really exciting. And it just gets really interesting. If we go back to that slide before that, Jerry, I had some comments on, improving the quality of the range system to compete against invasives. What I have seen over the last 2 years now is my wife caught it at first, Sally, when we started going out and looking at our range and driving around, we were seeing more wildflowers. And then this year I sent Jerry a picture of of our second year test study is that how are we going to compensate for the wild alfalfa? Where I put boost on or the Elevate Ag products, wild alfalfa was just coming great guns this year. And we're just seeing a lot more of that. And so that's telling us that what's wild alfalfa? It's a legume. We're getting nitrogen started. Is that going to be a year over year thing now? I don't know. I've always had a little bit of wild alfalfa, but nothing like I saw this year. And just noticing those things and the observations, more quail this year. My quail numbers are coming back. Jerry hasn't given me an answer, but dragonflies. We have a lot of dragonflies this year that have stayed around. They haven't come and left. Does that mean we got more beneficial insects coming into this? Are we getting more insects, period? What are we doing to the ecosystem? There are so many things that we don't know, but I'm seeing things happening. And that's what's got us excited is it's all looking like for positive. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with that. What else do we have on our slide deck here, Jerry? Implications. You want to add on that?
Yeah, just put down four implications of this that Kevin has kind of touched on, but we got better forage production. I think we're going to build a more resilient range ecosystem because as we've looked at the soil underneath that, we are improving that soil health. We're going to improve the microbial aspects of that. We'll improve infiltration rates as we change that overall system. So we will see that piece of the puzzle. That, as Kevin's mentioned, if we can improve the quality as well as the production, that expanding a herd without increasing the land area or getting all of this. The other piece of this that we haven't talked about is that maybe as we improve this, could allow young producers to become operators into this. In terms of that, I know there's a lot of discussion. Increasing the quality of the forage, basically in terms of what it means in the overall ecology that's out there. So the implications are really quite enormous in all of this. We gave a talk a year ago at the Nebraska range meeting. We had a lot of interest, not just from range people, but also Fish and Wildlife, looking at the habitat of improving that quality of that for other species. As Kevin mentioned, the quail, some of the beneficial insects and all of this. So we've yet to discover all the implications of that, but what we are seeing is that it does have an impact on what we can do. So that's kind of I'll just put these conclusions up for you, is that we do see this enhancing the production and quality of forage. We have to figure out why we're seeing some of the inconsistent results. And that's why we've got to do a deeper dive in terms of this diverse ecosystem, but it's really about the energy input into that. We have positive results in terms of looking at this. And, we had this increased interest from in soil as well as Organosan, and so the value that these commitments from these companies, they've allowed us to do some things because, like I said, this has been a commitment from companies. It's been a commitment from the producers in all of this to be able to make this work. So I think it's an exciting way in which we can now begin to look at this system from an entirely different perspective, understand the value of really what's happening for us from that viewpoint as well. So I'm going to stop sharing and we can open up for questions, Jennifer. So
That sounds great. We did have one come in the chat just a minute ago. So it's from Bryce Custer. And he was asking, Bryce will have a question.
Hi, Bryce.
All
So, I mean,
I'll read the question, but Bryce, you're able to unmute if you have some follow-up on it. The question was, can your water system support the herd increase on these fields?
Yes. Out in western Kansas this year, that was a little questionable because we finally, a week and a half ago, finally got enough runoff to fill the ponds. But yes, and I was already with rotational grazing that I was previously doing, I'd already added another pond to that 140 acre pasture because I was rotating it into 3 sections to move cows around. So, but right now I'm fortunate enough to have the water system in place to take care of that.
Kevin, you might talk about the spring that's in the prairie hay field and what's happened after you've begun to move towards regenerative ag.
So the prairie hay field, there's farm ground above it, and we always hayed that. And when I started in the regenerative ag, we didn't notice a whole lot, but I always grazed something out west of the house. And we started noticing the cows going down. And I went down in the fall after I had them out there and saw a puddle of water. And water stayed there year round. So when I built the last pond, we took the track hoe down and I dug a little test hole. And we have maintained enough water supply that it doesn't freeze over until late December. And so the cows are going down there when I put them out on stocks I grazed sedan, winter stockpile it, let the cows go out and eat it, and they go down there for their water. That's been a huge thing that we've seen. Runoff is changing. When we did the penetrometer test in the native grass, what was interesting, I don't know if I shared that with you yet, Jerry, is in the first year's sample, we'd go down about 8 inches, hit a hard pan. It'd be hard down to about 12, we'd break through. When we went into where we were applying for the second year round test, that penetrometer just went down. We'd already eliminated that hard pan. And this is just a continuation from west to east on this project. So I thought that was kind of interesting on that. And that also alludes to the fact that we're going to be able to retain more water.
So kind of answer your question, Bryce, is that we water will always be a major factor in all of this, but we think the increased capacity to absorb water and then store water within that profile, because the sustaining that growth and everything else to be able to get that, we think we'd have enough water to be able to support that overall cow curd increase and everything. So,
and we've got more questions coming in. Jerry, are you able to pull up, or either of you, the Q&A? I can happily read them to you, but if you want to read and answer as you go, that's great as well.
I have them right here.
Perfect.
I've got it open on the side. One of the questions is, how many species of forbs do you have in the pastures and hay ground? That's a really good question. We've taken pictures and everything else. We do see forbs in all of this. How many different species of forbs, we haven't quantified it from that standpoint. But as Kevin is alluding to, that we did see that major increase in wild alfalfa in the sites this year and everything else. The other question is, will you be able to share your soil health results when and if it's available? Most certainly. As we get those in, I expect some of those to start coming in the next 3 weeks and everything else. It'll take me a while to get it all compiled into usable forms. And the other question in there is, do you have 10 years worth of forage production data to compare your test years with? So we have stocking rates, and we have anecdotal information from all the different producers. We don't have 10 years worth of clipping data in all of this, and so that, we just have that piece of the information puzzle that's out there, and that would be that's always a critical piece in doing on-farm research and on-range research or anything else, is that we often don't have that previous data set that we would like to have, and particularly in range and forage production, because we just kind of accepted the way it was. And so now we've got to, maybe we get producers interested in looking at this, but also interested in paying attention to really what their productivity and quality is in their typical systems right now, and then begin to even share or participate in increased studies of this. Because one of the things that I think becomes important is that we build communities of producers that are interested, as Joanna mentioned in the introduction, is that we have that group called the Prairie Soil Pioneers. We've been looking at how do we build a rangeland pioneers group that can begin to look at this from that standpoint as well. So, I mean, I'm a firm believer, and I know Jennifer and Joanna is as well, as how do we build the communities that we not only conduct but we share, we move this forward, and we figure out what important factors we can have in all of this. Another question that just popped in is, what's your fertility program on winter stockpiled forages along with these products you're testing? So Kevin, I'll have you answer that. So
my winter stockpiled forages has typically, well, so my I'm just going to start from the spring and go forward. So typically in the spring, I plant peas and oats together to hay for cattle. And so I'm running 40, 50 pounds of N, 20 pounds of phos, a little bit of K, and some sulfur and some zinc. And then dry has not been, this has been a really good question for Jerry and I and our Prairie Soil Pioneers group as we've been moving forward. I have not been happy with the response I've been getting with dry. And so this year I changed my fertilizer program, but my typical program for Sudan was to go throw 30 pounds of N on with a little bit of phos if I thought we needed it, and some sulfur. This year I stumbled onto a product called Coron Metra, and the residue that I have on the ground from the previous year, I'm wondering if dry is not getting in the soil. So we sprayed a week and a half ago Coron Metra with 2 gallons of Boost, because that's a product we have locally as a foliar feed, and I think it's going to work really well for me. I don't know if foliar feeding is 100% the answer to everything, but I think for the Sudan it will. And I know I've reduced my nitrogen needs on Sudan. I also run sun hemp in my mix of 5 pounds. That produces some nitrogen. I throw some buckwheat in. The buckwheat will usually be able to bloom and do well up until it gets shaded out. But buckwheat will help make K available. I'm throwing some okra in this year because I found a study or two that said okra will provide benefits for your potassium. And then what I'm going to hay for Sudan, I threw some forage soybeans in, and I did that last year, and I saw a 2% protein bump with the forage soybeans. So that's, and then but then I go out, I'll just let that freeze out, and then in November I turn the cows out there to start grazing it, and I try and graze. I'm targeting an acre per cow of Sudan mix. I hope that answers your question.
We have a few minutes left. Everyone, feel free. You can raise your hand or type a question in. I did have a question for you, and you alluded to it a little bit when you were answering the first question, Kevin. So what has been the grazing system for each of these operators where things were applied? You said you've been doing managed grazing. Has that been pretty consistent? across the board. So you're seeing these gains above and beyond already having a managed grazing system is what I'm asking.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes. And I've actually, I was doing a rotational grazing system up until 3 years ago when I took my dad's cows over, and I went to a 90-day system where we ran some grass. Some grass came available away from the house, and since I'm fall calving, I'm double stocking for 90 days away from the house, and I bring everything home to calve. So I leave my grass empty, so I don't have to run around all over the country checking cows. And that has seemed to be really good, especially in western Kansas. We took it's been so dry. We've been catching enough spring rains and moisture that it lets that grass rest. And it's been really interesting how I've seen that pasture turn around. And then I'm also seeing my spring grasses come in for more forage capacity here at home. So
There, another question popped in, and it's a really critical one, I think, in all this discussion is, would it not be better to manage the prairie better through grazing and fire, not just spring burns, to improve diversity of forage, forage production, and soil health? The prairie before cattle were introduced was some of the most productive soil in the world and had good soil health. And yes, I think really what this points to in all of this is that I think we need to relearn how we manage uh, our native systems and all of this. I will plug a book for you all to pay attention to. It's not, I didn't write it, so you don't have to worry about that. It's called Sea of Grass. It's about the grasslands of the Great Plains. And it's written very well. It talks about all the different things that happen and when we begin to cultivate land as well. And I think that we need to understand that we can restore these, but I think we've got to figure out how do we do it better, as Kevin had just mentioned, as well as not pushing that grass as hard, maybe improving that what we put on it to help it grow. We do see that change in species composition out there. I think a lot of things, and it'll begin to heal itself in terms of a lot of the different practices going on. So, it's not just about what length of that grazing period is and how we stock it, it's how we manage it from a more holistic point of view.
And I think the other thing that we're looking at is we want to run this trial 3 to 5 years, and I want to run it longer to see if we do bring the soil back to if we can get it closer back to the original state before we messed it up, our native range. And so, because there has been studies out there in the past where you go along a year or two and it looks really good, and then everybody quits studying and says, well, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and then it falls on its face. And that's not what we're about. We're about longevity, about bringing things back, and what can we do to help a producer. I'm helping myself with this study. We're sharing the information, but the goal is I want to figure out how to make my soil better and how to improve my bottom line, just like everybody else does. And that's the ultimate goal here for me. And I just fortunate enough to have Jerry as a brother-in-law to help guide and help the stewardship of this. And it's a fun. Right now it's a fun trip. It's fun to see the changes that I see, and so
I think that sounds like a great place to end it. Anyone in attendance here, if you're like me and you think of your questions following the end of any presentations, you can submit them to me. If you go through the Kansas Soil Health Alliance website, there's a easy way to have a contact us. And in fact, I'm going to pop up our website real quick. I want to highlight, as we're in the thick of field days and events going on. Might as well put a little promotion for a couple of events we have coming up that the Kansas Soil Health Alliance is part of in the next month. Our first one kicks off tomorrow down in Greensburg. That one is full for attendees, but we do have a couple more coming up August 15th in Almena and August 21st and 22nd in Jewell and Mitchell counties. If you just go to kssoilhealth.org, you can click and learn more about those events. And if you click on events, you'll also be able to learn about any other events that are going on that are soil health related in Kansas or into our neighboring states. We keep a real comprehensive list to help you keep that education in place. And if you need to reach us, if you go to the contact button here, you can easily be put in contact with myself. And with that, I will pass it to Joanna to close us out and give us a little introduction for next month's forum.
Yeah, so next month we will hear from Brooklyn Armijo. She is a geology associate with the water well program at KDHE. She will be speaking to us about nitrates in groundwater, and that will be on August 28th.
Thanks so much. Thank you everyone for participating. We look forward to seeing you on our next call in August.